Thank you. So thank you to the organizer for this wonderful conference. I think it's rare that I leave a conference getting so many ideas. So thanks to the organizer and all the speakers for that. Unfortunately, I didn't meet Russ long ago, so I cannot add one other nice story. And I feel quite unlucky because it sounds that it was quite exciting to work with Russ. But I also can tell you that I feel lucky also because arriving one generation after the masters, you have a wonderful mathematical landscapes, which is very and beautiful, which is very enjoyable to explore. And today I will discuss one mountain of this landscape, which is a well-known mountain. It has already many roots. It is the sharpness of the phase transition, and it's particularly the exponential decay in subcritical percolation. And today I will come back slightly to these roots, which is very related to one was described by Michael yesterday. And today I will suggest to explore a new route which goes through the valley of a randomized algorithm. Okay, just maybe I forgot to say happy birthday. So I didn't. So happy birthday, and then now let's move. Yeah. Okay. So we already heard a lot about the Bernoulli percolation. So for this talk, and just because I want to focus on ideas, I will stick on ZD, but most of what I will say will be more general and apply for transitive graphs. But since I will do pictures and also want to mention a little bit of history, I will restrict in this case for ZD. Just, I need to point. Just to fix the notation, we start so from a box of size D. We have a parameter p between 0 and 1, and here I just look at the finite box. And we toss a coin with probability p, an edge is open, with probability 1 minus p, it's closed. And we get a random configuration, which is something like this, which is an element of 0, 1 to the n. So 1 corresponds to an open edge, so here you have an open edge. 0 corresponds to a closed edge. And in percolation, we're interested in the connectivity property of this graph. So what we want to call an open path is just a path that is made of open edges. And also need to discuss the cluster. So cluster is just a connected component of this graph. So here you have a small cluster. Here you have a bigger cluster. And the Bernoulli percolation measure is very simple. It's just for one configuration, it's p to the number of open edges, 1 minus p to the number of closed edges. So you see, it's very... I want to emphasize that this is very elementary. I didn't even talk about infinite volume measure. And I can already define the quantity of interest, which is theta n of p. So I just look at the probability that in this graph, I have a path from the origin to the boundary of the box. And we can define the theta p, which is just the limit of this quantity as n goes to infinity. So it corresponds to infinite volume, the probability that 0 is connected to infinity. And there is a phase transition at a parameter pc, will depend on d, so that below theta p is 0 and above theta p is positive. So this is just a well-known fact. And one thing that I really liked, and one of the reasons I got attracted by this subject, is that here you're in a situation where things are very elementary to define, and already you can ask a question. So first, just let's look at a simulation just to have a picture in mind. So when p is smaller than pc, I just drew the cluster of the origin. When p is smaller than pc, you can see it's very small. When p larger than pc, you have an infinite connected component that invades the whole space. And when p equals pc, which will not be the subject of my talk, you see a very rich fractal structure appearing. So already you see that there are nice behavior happening there. And in this landscape, there are very nice peaks that you can already look, but without any preparation. Basically, it's just with this, which are natural question to ask. So first question, we say that when p is smaller than pc, we know theta p is 0. And a natural question, we know that this theta n goes to 0, but at which speed? So it's the first natural question to ask. Another question, and it's if you think of for the physical model, this is a model for porosity in random media. So a natural question is not if I start from 0 and I go to boundary of a box. A natural question is, do I cross a box from left to right? And a priori, it's not clear what is the answer to this question. I just look at the path, existence path from left to right. What is the limit of this quantity? It's not even clear that it has a limit. But okay, and last question, also very natural here. Can we compute the value of PC? So as we saw yesterday, we can actually climb the first peak. We can solve the first question. It's a theorem in the 80s, and when p is smaller than pc, we have an exponential decay. So it was proved by Eisenman and Barsky and Menchikov in the 87. So in this region, when p is lower than pc, we know that this probability goes exponentially fast to 0. And I just mentioned that, and it will come back later, that with Hugo we had also an alternative proof of this result. So basically, for this theorem, there are 3 proofs, and I will come back on this later. But first, let me explain. Just first mention an application, a very simple one. Is that from this you can also directly answer to the second question in the subcritical regime. So I will just write the argument. It's just a simple union bound. So if you take p smaller than pc, and if you look at the probability of a path from left to right, you just say it's smaller than the sum over the on the left left hand side of the box, the probability of I start from x and goes to right. And you know that if p is smaller than pc, since we have exponential decay, we know this is smaller than exponential minus cn. So this basically is smaller than something of order n to the d minus 1 times exponential minus cn. So it goes to 0. So you see this exponential decay already gives this nice answer that we know also in the subcritical regime that the probability of a box from left to right goes to 0. And this fact actually it's fairly intuitive, but even if you see the picture, but it's not easy to prove without the exponential decay. Just to mention that actually there is another fact which is also easy to prove once we have the uniqueness of the infinity cluster in ZD, is that this probability, when you are above PC, it goes to 1. So I already gave you the answer of the first 2 questions. Let's move to the third one. What is the value of PC? And it's actually a theorem of a well-known theorem of Kesten, which is in the dimension 2. We can compute the value of PC, and it's 1/2. And the proof, once we have this picture, is one line, completely straightforward. And actually, I will just use a result that we have already seen from Stas, that if you look at a square at 1/2, there is duality. And by duality, we know when p equals 1/2, the probability to cross a square is 1/2. And you see, once you have this picture, you directly, that when you identify something like this, you directly know that you are at PC. So basically, like once you have this picture, this theorem follows. So I hope I managed to motivate a little bit. Like I just wanted to give motivation and to see that this exponential decay, I think, is something good to have in mind. That when we have exponential decay, we can compute into this the value of the critical point. So okay, it's a good theorem, but now I would like to discuss known proofs, so the previous proof of this.
But this is true in any dimension, right?
Yeah, this is true in any dimension. That's true. But I just wanted to mention that in dimension 2, it's actually the difficult part of the proof of PC quantum life. Once you have exponential decay, basically you can compute the critical value. I find it quite, it's really like a difficulty in, the difficult part actually. It's a fact that once you know that you decay, this quantity goes to 0 in subcritical, you are done. So it's a nice theorem. So when you have a nice theorem, you see it is powerful. You want to extend. You want to see that it applies in many contexts. And in particular, you would like to apply to models which are. Maybe I should stay on this side. Okay. We would like to extend to model with, for example, to model with dependency. We see, for example, in the talk of one way to think of a model which has dependency is to look at the model Jeff introduced in this talk this morning. For example, if you color cluster independently, then you already have local dependencies. Imagine you color small cluster. You want to think that it has the same behavior, but now your model has dependencies. So you cannot apply. You will not be able to apply this proof, and I will explain why. All the proofs, they rely, and Michael already mentioned this, is that all these proofs, these three proofs, they all rely on BK inequality. So what is BK inequality? Something that is very natural. I will just give one application, which is basically the one we need. So you take 3 points, x, y, and z, and you look at the probability that you have a path from x to y, and so it's BK.
You don't use BK in your proof.
No, this is correct, but the thing is that in the proof we use an exploration, and it's basically, in some sense, it's related to BK. It's just, I mean, this will explain the difficulty. Basically.
The point is that in 2 dimensions you do not need BK.
Yeah, I will come back on that later.
Yeah.
Thank you for anticipating. I will come back on that later, and that's actually a very good point. The story in 2D doesn't use this because you have another tool. But in higher dimension, these 3 proofs, they all rely in one way or another on this. I mean, in general, and it's you may avoid BK by an exploration, but the difficulty is this one. So assume that you have a path from x to y and a path from y to z, where the paths are disjoint. And basically, you want to say that the probability of this, is smaller than the product of the probability. And this, for Bernoulli percolation, is quite intuitive. You say, okay, I have a path from x to y, and then in the complement of this path, I need to have another path. So if I look at this picture, I pay a first price for this first path, and then I have less space. So the second path costs me at least this quantity. But you see, when you start to have dependencies, you completely lose this property, because the first path can help the other. So it's really like, this is really the reason why these 3 proofs collapse. And we were a bit disappointed when we had this proof, because it was very simple, and we say, okay, now we have a very simple proof. So when you have a very simple proof, you expect to be able to extend it. But we were really stuck to this kind of a problem. Like in some sense, you are really stuck to the fact that disjoint paths may help each other.
When you say the proof collapses, in which context does it collapse?
Is that for example, I will give model. So.
You don't believe that BK is true? So.
No, yeah, I will give model. Maybe I don't give. Yeah, that's a natural model for which we don't manage to prove it. Is that if you take model where we just add little dependencies, like something which is called k-dependent percolation. Let's say like model where if I take sets which are distance k from each other, then this is independent, but maybe I have local dependencies. And for example, you can think of just a random partition, and then you color with probability exactly in the spirit of this morning. Then what you end up with is a model with local dependencies where you lose this decorrelation. And for example, even for a two-dependent percolation, we were not able to prove it. I mean, it was really frustrating because if you think something where, if I really ask a very strong independence property, just things which are at distance 2 get independent, then we were not able to prove it. So there is really something. It was really exactly like this kind of thing that was really something which was important in this reproof. There are other cases where like all the models which come from continuum percolation, where you kind of start from a random medium, like Voronoi percolation, you have this kind of local dependencies that come from. I don't want to give more detail. And one other that I will discuss later is FK percolation, which is also a natural model to look at. And I will come back on that later. So now I come back to the two-dimensional case. And actually, you were right, in the dimension 2, the story is a little bit different. And the exponential decay was proved earlier by Kesten. And he managed to compute the critical point. And there is one reason for that, is that in dimension 2, you can use a tool. You can really use planar topology. Like you have a tool which is very nice. You can use crossing probabilities. And if you start to cross rectangle, then you have some topological constraints that are very nice that allows you to do a renormalization. These crossing probabilities are related to each other by the Rosse-Seymour Welch. And one thing which is also nice is that they satisfy a sharp threshold phenomenon. So let's look, for example, at crossing of a square. It's possible to show that the probability moves rapidly from 0 to 1, actually. And this is a property which is quite nice, and that Kesten managed to prove in dimension 2 using a very geometrical approach. So the proof was a little bit different, and actually the story for dependent model also is a little bit different. Actually, in 2D, it was actually generalized to model with, as I said, model which has some local dependencies, such that Voronoi percolation. And I think the main paper, like the most important breakthrough, was Bolobash and Riordan, who proved PC equal 1/2 for Voronoi percolation. And the reason why they managed to do this, and what is nice in their proof, is that basically renormalization and Rousseau-Seymour Welch. So the Rousseau-Seymour Welch, they had to do another Rousseau-Seymour Welch, but the sharp threshold, they use the tool from Boolean function. And that's very nice. It's that they use a tool that comes from abstract Boolean function theory to prove this sharp threshold result. And then when you have this abstract tool, actually, you can actually handle other model with dependencies. So using similar approach and also this Kahn-Kalai and lineal theorem, Vincent Beffara and Duminil-Copin, an adaptation of it, which managed to prove exactly the exponential decay for FK percolation and compute the critical point. And also for Boolean percolation, we can prove some kind of sharpness result. But I just wanted to give the two-dimensional case because I find the story is quite nice. You have the Bernoulli percolation case, which was handled by geometric method. Then you use an external tool from Boolean function, which was a sharp threshold phenomenon, which is very general phenomenon. And then using this tool, you can handle model with dependencies. And basically, the story, it's a bit the story that happened on higher dimension, except that the tool will not be exactly the same. And I want to give a new theorem, which is the one for FK percolation. I don't know. Maybe it's.
I think you have to be right near it and point directly at it.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just briefly define it. We just work in the box. So again, we look at the random configuration of the box. We have for a configuration, we have a number of open edges, a number of closed edges. So for Bernoulli percolation, the measure was just that. And we can count the cluster, and the cluster I will count them, all the clusters that touch the boundary by 1. So this is a FK percolation measure, and I have this term. The probability of a configuration will be p to the number of open edges, 1 minus p to the number of closed edges, and you have this additional term q to the number of clusters. And of course, to make it a probability measure, you need to renormalize. Why is this model nice? First, it has motivations. It's very related to a model from statistical mechanics, such as Ising model or Potts model, by exactly a method of coloring the clusters. So understanding properties of this will lead to a nice understanding of Potts model, but also it has a very nice thing that it shares properties with Bernoulli percolation. So basically, it's a very nice tool for mathematicians because we can kind of try to extend things from Bernoulli percolation to FK. Then we can prove things in FK and then extend it to for Bernoulli for a model for a statistical mechanics model. And for FK percolation, we managed to extend the proof and prove with together with Hugo and Aran Raufi that you have exponential decay in a subcritical regime. So I just mentioned quickly that it was known in the case Q equal 1, which corresponds to Bernoulli percolation. It was also known, it's a very nice proof of Eisenman, Barskin, Fernandez, using also this very elegant differential inequality for Ising. In the case, so it relates to FK with Q equal 2. And in dimension 2, as I mentioned earlier, it was also proved by Beffara and Duminil-Copin, and Vincent and Beffara and Hugo. Okay, just as a remark is that we obtain a corresponding result for Potts model, that the correlation decay exponentially fast in the subcritical regime. So, as earlier, so for FK we can define all this quantity. We can define the probability to go to distance n. We can define theta. We have the same phase transition. And as I said earlier, from the exponential decay, we can understand that the probability in subcritical regime, the probability of crossing from left to right, goes to 0 in subcritical regime. And again, in the supercritical regime, we can also show that the crossing probability goes to 1. This is again using just uniqueness result. So as a consequence, we can also compute, obtain a new proof of the computation of the critical value in 2D. And the proof is the same as in for percolation, except that here the duality is a little bit different, but the FK percolation has a self-duality property at square root of q divided by 1 plus square root of q. And if you look at the probability to cross a square at this value, so here you have to be careful with boundary condition. I say you count the cluster, so actually here it's wired, free, and free, and the wired are wired together, but basically this is the idea is that at PC the crossing probability is bounded away from 0 and 1 at square root of q divided by 1 plus square root of q. But since you have this picture, it must be the critical point. So as a consequence, we obtain also a new proof of the result of Hugo and Vincent. So let's move to the proof. So I will not give the proof for FK percolation. I just want to explain the proof for Bernoulli percolation. And basically, the proof will work the same, and just explain how it changes later. So now we are back on Bernoulli percolation, and the proof has two ingredients. The first one is very elementary. And it relies on so I just changed the notation to show that it has nothing to do with percolation. So you just take a sequence of differentiable functions, you assume that they have a limit, and you assume that they satisfy this differential inequality. Okay? So this differential, the derivative of n is larger than Cn over Sn, where Sn is the partial sum of the Fk. And you assume that it's larger than this times Fn. So your goal, if you have something like this, I call this differential inequality M, then you must have a P0 between 0 and 1, where you have this behavior. Below P0, I have exponential decay, and above P0, I must grow at least linearly. So I think it's a little bit like the differential inequality Michael presented yesterday show that there are some regimes that cannot happen, like in terms of exponent and so on. Here it says that basically when you have a differential inequality like that, either you decay exponentially fast or you are bounded, but you cannot be otherwise. And I want to say that there is something which is quite nice with this differential inequality, is that it appeared earlier in the work of Menshikov. Actually, it's exactly the differential inequality Menshikov proved for theta n. So, as a consequence from this elementary lemma, the only thing we need to show is that, so it's our goal, is that theta n prime is larger than Cn over sum over k smaller than n theta k times theta n. Because if we show something like this, then we know that this quantity either it becomes it's positive or you have exponential decay. But if you look at the diagram, then you know you have finished your proof. So the only thing you need to prove is this. So I don't want to go in the detail of the proof of this lemma.
But this is a simple calculus lemma, right?
Yeah, it's a simple calculus, very elementary. That's why I just wanted to change. It's just there is no percolation. It's just like yeah. So we had a shorter version of proving it by introducing really introducing P0 as the right guy where this bootstrapping starts from this differential inequality. But it's very elementary calculus. I mean, there is nothing very. But it's quite nice, I think. I mean, I ask people doing PDEs if they understand something from this, because this differential inequality and equalities, you think that there are some mystery on. As Michael said yesterday, probabilists, we don't understand them very well, and maybe we kind of escape. So that's why we put them in a technical lemma and say, okay, But I think understanding this, maybe, I don't know. It can be because if you see this as two parameters, it's really like a PDE. There is one discrete, one. Maybe there is some information to extract.
Who means where?
What?
Who means where?
Yes, I guess. There's a one piece of French.
Ah, where?
No, this is where.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
It's better who, it's shorter.
Yeah. It's a contraction of where. Yeah, sorry.
You misread.
Yeah. Yeah, I misprint, sorry. So, okay. As I said, now to prove this, we will not stay in percolation world. We will or we will stay, I don't know where the boundary stop, maybe. But I just want to go in the algorithm, like a little bit more closer to the computer scientist. And I just want to ask a different question, something which is a priori completely unrelated to our problem. We just look at this event and ask yourself, how would you try to approximate? So you have a computer and try to approximate the probability of this quantity. So there is a first method, which is quite naive. It's just I sample all the edges. And then I do like exploration of the cluster, like a depth first search, and I see if the event happened. So the complex. The event A is that there is a path from 0 to the boundary of the box of size n. So the very first naive method is just I toss all the edges, and then I look in the random graph if I see the picture, if I see the connection. So the complexity of one simulation is just at first step, I need to sample all the edges, so it's of order n to the d. But for people who have never thought about this, I just want you to think for a little bit to how you would do this. From that, I think it's good to just to think, because how would you simulate this? think maybe everybody has already seen that, so I can call it up. So the idea is just you don't want to sample everything. You want to kind of explore from the origin. So what you want to do is you want to explore the cluster. So you want to start at 0, and you want to say I start at 0, and I want to see if there is a connection. So I will just look at I just fix an order of the edges at beginning, and just I explore one by one the edges. So I explore this one, maybe it's open, and then I explore the smallest one which is accessible. Maybe it's this one. Then I explore, it's open. Then maybe this one is closed, this one is closed, this one is closed. I continue. I explore this one, and so on and so forth. So I explore all the edges one by one by what we call an explore, like it's just an exploration algorithm, and the algorithm stops when I have finished to explore the cluster. So at the end, I know if the event occurs or not because I have explored all the cluster. Either this cluster touch the boundaries, and I know, or it doesn't, and I know as well because I see like a blocking surface. So this is an algorithm that determines the event A. And what is the complexity of this algorithm? So it's just the expected number of edges that I have explored. And if I just permute, it's just the sum of all the edges of the probability that I reveal the edge E. So the complexity of one simulation is now a priori better if I can make this. Imagine you're in subcritical regime, you will basically find it all the time, so you don't need to look at all the edges. So this complexity is a priori better. But it was all this idea was just to introduce you to, in a natural way, this quantity. In this context, it comes very naturally, and it's called the revealment of an algorithm for an event A. It's a very natural quantity to introduce. And basically what a computer scientist wants to do is to approximate, is to minimize, to optimize the L1 norm of this revealment. So what is quite nice is that the revealment is a vector of the edges, and I just want to minimize the sum of this vector. What is it, Nicola?
I think you use A for both of the events and the algorithm. And the
But it's a different typography. It's not the same A. Yeah, they are not. Yeah. There is one which is more calligraphic. Yeah. Sorry if it confuses. Okay. So what is nice with this revealment is that it's actually super useful to do other things than just optimize that. So I will just give one other way. It's very nice to prove sharp threshold results. So I call this O'Donnell this OSSS inequality. It's actually a consequence, but this is the way we will use it. Basically, the revealment appears very nicely also if I want to understand derivative. And now I'm back. See that for my problem, it's quite nice. The derivative of the probability of an event is larger than 1 of the maximum times the variance of the event. And you see that for us now, what we want to do to make it small is not the L1 norm, is an infinity norm. We want the revealment in the maximum to be small. And if we manage to show that we have an algorithm with a small revealment, then we will have a large derivative. But it's a general idea that if you have some things you can explore with few edges, then you kind of have for free a sharp threshold phenomenon. So okay, we have, if we look at the first scenario we did, we had an algorithm which was the exploration from the cluster of the origin. But this one is not very good. So why? If I start to exploring from the origin, yes, exactly. So the first edge, I always explore it for sure. So the revealment of this edge will always be 1. It was good for the complexity. For computer scientists, this algorithm was maybe good, but for our problem, it's bad. It's not the right guys to do. And the very nice idea is to use. So I don't know where it first appears, this notion of a randomized algorithm, but it's just to use something which is not deterministic algorithm, but a randomized algorithm. And the theorem still holds.
Maybe Anne Condon that
Condom?
in the 90s.
Okay. And for the same kind of reason, or
For population.
not for? Okay.
General decision to randomized decision.
Okay. So it's in our context, it comes naturally because you want to kind of start from a random place to kill this deterministic one. So I will just give another algorithm. So the idea will be just the following. So we are looking at the event. We sample k uniformly at random. So we have a k. And what I will do is that rather than starting to explore from 0, I will explore from all the clusters that touch the boundary of this box. Okay? So I just sample an hypersurface here at random uniformly, and I will start exploring all the clusters. So let me show a picture of such an exploration. So it looks something like that. And you see this algorithm has a very nice properties also. It determines the event, if the event holds at the end. Either I see a connection because this cluster must cross this surface. So either I see a path like that, and then I know the connection holds. Either I don't see this, and then I see a blocking hypersurface that shows that the event does not occur. So it's an algorithm that determines A. Very good. So now let's compute. So let me compute the revealment for this algorithm. So we will apply this inequality, but let's look at what it is. So let's look at one edge. So let's say I have an edge here, and I want to compute. So my goal is just now, I will prove this inequality and hopefully in one line. So the goal is to show this inequality, and what is the revealment? So if I look at one edge, the revealment on one edge is just the probability that each edge is connected to this random surface. So let me introduce, and I will condition on one quantity, which is the distance of this edge from this surface. So delta E is just the probability that the edge is connected to this random surface. Then I say I condition on this distance. So it's a sum over L. So the distance is smaller than n. Probability of E is connected to the boundary of the box of size k, knowing that the distance between, so this is an L infinity distance between the edge and the boundary of the box is exactly equal to L, times the probability, then this distance is equal to L. Okay? So here you have quantities that are easy to bound. This one is just to arrive exactly at a distance. You see, you have at most two possibilities. So this is always smaller than 2 over n. This is easy. But now, imagine this distance is exactly L. The event I'm looking at is the event that I have a connection from this edge, so one of the two extremities, to this box. And you see that at least from one of the two edges, you must have a path that goes to distance L. So this is smaller than 2, the 2 from just because I have one extremity, times theta L. Okay, and I think now you see it's smaller than, so I have maybe 4 Sn over n. Where here, Sn is just the sum of k smaller than n, theta k. It's better like that. Okay, so we have a nice bound on the revealment. Now we just apply this inequality. So by the OSSS inequality, it gives us, so the derivative is just theta n prime. So here, theta n, the differentiability is just a polynomial, no problem. It's larger than 1 over, and I use my bound on the revealment, so n over 4Sn, and the variance is theta n times 1 minus theta n. And so here I'm very close to what I want, except that I have this term. But this term, I know that in this regime, I am bounded away from, I can work in a regime that is away from 0 and 1. So this, just by closing edges at the boundary, it's always, I can assume it's larger than some constant. So in the end, I get that theta n prime is larger than some constant n over Sn theta n. And it ends the proof. So basically, you have just two tools. When you put them together, you get the proof of exponential decay. So in the last 3 minutes, yeah. And I just think I'm done with most of what I wanted to say. Just need to find again the pointer. As I said, this method is quite nice because it extends to other models. And let me mention a little bit how it works when you want to extend. Because here it was for Bernoulli percolation. But actually, you see here, we didn't really use any geometric properties. We didn't use decay or decorrelation. It's just, we just use this revealment method. So now imagine you have a model which is not IID. So you can think of your favorite, which one of the models I suggested before. And but just let me explain how it comes from, this OSSS inequality. I actually combined two inequalities. The OSSS inequality is this one. The sum of the revealment times the influence is larger than the variance. This kind of improvement of Poincaré inequality. And actually, the proof of this is very nice. It's just a replacement method, and it's not difficult. And
this is also related to some result by Callaghan.
Yes.
But he doesn't do algorithm, but just witnesses. But,
okay. Okay. I don't see which one. So.
Just his famous result about concentration of measures.
Okay. 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 So. Yeah. Okay. The other theorem is Rousseau's formula is that this sum of the influence is just bounded below the derivative. So what you want to do in a model with dependencies, you want to show these two types of inequalities. So imagine you have a model with dependency. So you introduce this quantity, and the first thing is that you want to write your space as a product space. You want to tensorize it. So for example, you would like to write it as a nice function of a product space of a product random variables. Then in this product space, you can apply the SSS inequality. Actually, it was not restricted to Bernoulli percolation. So you have this inequality in this product space. And then in this initial space, you would like to relate. So in Bernoulli percolation, the influence was exactly the sum, the derivative. But maybe for a more general model, you have to relate it. So you want to prove some kind of Rousseau's formula. You have this very natural notion of influence, and you want to prove a lower bound, the sum of the influence. And then if you manage to do this, wrapping together, we get this inequality. And this approach works quite well with a model such as Voronoi percolation, where the tensorization is just we divide our space into squares, and also Boolean percolation. But also like for K-dependent models and so on. For FK percolation that I mentioned, we had to work more because the SSS inequality was not, this tensorization doesn't work because you don't have a priori completely independence. For FK, you may have long-range dependency. So we had to reprove a version of the SSS inequality. And I think it's the one, so a version of the SSS inequality for monotonic measures such as FK percolation. And I think I will stop here. Toda.